In the tapestry of human history, few stories weave together such profound themes of faith, deception, and redemption as that of Jacob, the patriarch whose life reflects both the brokenness of humanity and the mysterious workings of divine providence. His narrative, as told in the book of Genesis, challenges our understanding of justice, mercy, and the ways in which God accomplishes his purposes through flawed individuals. Picture this: a barren woman, Rebekah, and her husband Isaac, the promised son of Abraham, waiting anxiously for a child for 2 decades. In a world where barrenness was seen as both a personal tragedy and a societal curse, their prayers must have carried an air of desperation. Genesis 25:21 records Isaac's fervent prayer, and God's response was nothing short of miraculous. Rebekah conceived, but her joy quickly turned to confusion and distress. Genesis 25:22-23 recounts Rebekah's divine encounter. The babies jostled each other within her, and she said, "Why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. The Lord said to her, "2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. 1 people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." Rebekah's womb became a battlefield, a harbinger of the lifelong struggle that would define not only her twin sons, but entire nations. The prophecy shattered the expectations of their time, reversing the natural order where the firstborn would typically inherit the blessings of leadership. The twins' dramatic arrival hinted at the destinies that lay ahead. Esau, the firstborn, was red and covered with hair, a visual marker of his rugged, impulsive nature. Jacob, the younger, emerged clutching Esau's heel, a symbolic act foretelling his life as a supplanter and striver. Their names, Esau, linked to the land of Edom, and Jacob, meaning he grasps the heel, encapsulated their essence and future roles. As they grew, the stark contrast between the brothers became evident. Esau was a man of the wild, a hunter who thrived in the open country. Jacob, in contrast, was a tent dweller, embodying a quieter, more calculated nature. Genesis 25:28 paints a picture of familial discord. Isaac, drawn to Esau's hunting prowess, favored him, while Rebekah's love rested firmly on Jacob. This division, rooted in preference, laid the foundation for the conflict that would tear the family apart. The turning point in the brothers' early lives is a seemingly trivial incident that resonates with symbolic weight. Esau, returning famished from the field, begged Jacob for a bowl of stew. What followed was a transaction that revealed the core of their characters. Jacob, ever opportunistic, demanded Esau's birthright in exchange for the meal. Esau's response, "Look, I am about to die. What good is the birthright to me?" underscored his short-sightedness and disregard for the sacred inheritance. In contrast, Jacob's calculated shrewdness showcased his determination to secure the blessings tied to the birthright, even through questionable means. The birthright represented far more than material wealth. It carried spiritual significance, including the covenantal blessings passed down from Abraham. By trading it for a meal, Esau revealed a reckless spirit, one driven by immediate gratification. Jacob, while cunning, demonstrated a deeper understanding of the birthright's value, a theme that would echo throughout his journey. Jacob's pursuit of the divine blessing reached its climax in one of the Bible's most dramatic moments, the deception of Isaac. With Rebekah's guidance, Jacob disguised himself as Esau to steal the blessing meant for the firstborn. Genesis 27 describes the tension-filled scene, where Jacob, clad in goatskins and Esau's garments, presented himself to his blind father. Isaac's blessing, intended for Esau, passed to Jacob, affirming the prophecy given to Rebekah before their birth. The fallout was catastrophic. Esau, enraged by the betrayal, vowed to kill Jacob, forcing him to flee to Haran under the guise of seeking a wife. This act of deceit and its consequences marked a turning point in Jacob's life, sending him on a journey of exile, transformation, and reconciliation. In the wilderness, Jacob encountered God in a dream at Bethel, where he saw a ladder reaching to heaven with angels ascending and descending. This vision reaffirmed God's covenant with Abraham and Isaac, now extended to Jacob. Despite his flaws, Jacob was chosen to carry forward the divine promises. Over the years, Jacob's journey was marked by struggle and growth. His time with Laban, where he was both deceiver and deceived, mirrored his earlier actions and served as a crucible for his character. By the time he returned to Canaan, Jacob was no longer the same man. His wrestling match with a divine being at Peniel symbolized his transformation. He emerged with a new name, Israel, meaning he struggles with God, and a limp, a reminder of his encounter and the cost of his blessing. Before we continue with the video and the rest of the story about Jacob, I want to ask for your help. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of the year, so I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe and help me out. Okay, let's continue. Jacob's story reaches a poignant resolution in his reunion with Esau. After years of estrangement, the brothers met with trepidation, but instead of vengeance, Esau embraced Jacob, offering forgiveness. This act of reconciliation was a testament to the healing power of grace, even in the face of profound betrayal. The narrative of Genesis 27 draws us into a drama of ambition, deception, and irreversible consequences, a pivotal moment in the story of Isaac's family that forever shaped the destinies of Jacob and Esau. Against the backdrop of Isaac's advanced age and failing sight, this chapter reveals the human frailty and divine sovereignty at work in fulfilling God's promises. As Isaac approached the end of his life, he sought to bestow the patriarchal blessing on Esau, his eldest son. Genesis 27:1-4 introduces the scene. Isaac said, "I am now old and do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your quiver, and your bow, and go out to the field to hunt game for me. Prepare me the kind of tasty food I like, and bring it to me to eat, so that I may give you my blessing before I die." Isaac's urgency reflects the weight of the blessing, a sacred and prophetic act meant to convey divine favor and establish the destiny of the next generation. However, his preference for Esau, despite the earlier sale of the birthright to Jacob, complicates the narrative. Whether unaware of or dismissive of the agreement between the brothers, Isaac's intentions set the stage for a dramatic turn of events. Hearing Isaac's plan, Rebekah, who favored Jacob, took matters into her own hands. Genesis 27:5-10 reveals her bold strategy. Rebekah said to her son Jacob, "I heard your father say to your brother Esau, 'Now, my son, listen carefully and do what I tell you. Go out to the flock and bring me 2 choice young goats, so I can prepare some tasty food for your father, just the way he likes it. Then take it to your father to eat, so that he may give you his blessing before he dies.'" Rebekah's motives were complex. On one hand, she may have sought to fulfill God's prophecy that the older will serve the younger, Genesis 25:23. On the other, her personal preference for Jacob drove her to manipulate the situation. Her plan placed Jacob in a precarious position, both morally and physically, risking a curse if their deception was discovered. Jacob's initial hesitation reveals his fear, not of the moral implications, but of being caught. Genesis 27:11-13 captures this tension. Jacob said to Rebekah, his mother, "But my brother Esau is a hairy man while I have smooth skin. What if my father touches me? I would appear to be tricking him and would bring down a curse on myself rather than a blessing." His mother said to him, "My son, let the curse fall on me. Just do what I say. Go and get them for me." Rebekah's determination underscores her willingness to bear the consequences, demonstrating a blend of maternal protection and unyielding resolve. She prepared a disguise for Jacob, using goatskins to simulate Esau's hairy skin, and dressing him in Esau's clothing to complete the deception. The encounter between Jacob and Isaac is fraught with suspense and moral ambiguity. Genesis 27:18-29 narrates the deception. Jacob went to his father and said, "My father." "Yes, my son," he answered. "Who is it?" Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn." Jacob's lies deepen as he claims divine favor for his quick success, saying, "The Lord your God gave me success." Genesis 27:20. Despite his suspicions, Isaac ultimately trusts his sense of touch over his hearing. The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. Genesis 27:22. Finally convinced, Isaac bestows the blessing, rich with imagery and profound promises. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you, and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed. Genesis 27:28-29. This blessing affirmed Jacob's dominance over Esau, fulfilling the prophecy given to Rebekah before their birth. The narrative crescendos with Esau's return. Discovering the deception, both father and son are overcome with shock and despair. Genesis 27:33-34 describes Isaac's reaction. Isaac trembled violently and said, "Who was it then that hunted game and brought it to me? I ate it just before you came, and I blessed him, and indeed he will be blessed." Esau's response is gut-wrenching. When Esau heard his father's words, he burst out with a loud and bitter cry and said to his father, "Bless me too, my father." Genesis 27:34. The permanence of Isaac's blessing highlights its prophetic nature. Though Esau pleads for another blessing, Isaac's response underscores the finality of his earlier words. "I have made him lord over you, and have made all his relatives his servants. What can I possibly do for you, my son?" Genesis 27:37. Esau's anguish is palpable. His lament, "Isn't he rightly named Jacob? This is the second time he has taken advantage of me," reveals the depth of his bitterness and regret. Genesis 27:36. This moment marks a turning point, not only for the brothers, but for the family as a whole. Jacob secures the blessing, but at great cost. The bond between the brothers is shattered, and Esau's bitterness will drive him to plot revenge. Rebekah's intervention, though successful in achieving her goal, sets the stage for years of familial strife and separation. The story of Jacob and Esau serves as a powerful reminder of the complexity of human relationships and the sovereignty of God. Despite the flawed actions of the individuals involved, God's purposes are fulfilled. Jacob's deception and Esau's anguish underscore the profound weight of the blessing, a gift that carried not only material wealth, but also divine favor and responsibility. The narrative invites reflection on themes of trust, ambition, and divine providence. Rebekah and Jacob's actions demonstrate the dangers of taking matters into one's own hands, even with good intentions. Isaac's blindness, both physical and emotional, reminds us of the importance of discernment. Esau's regret highlights the value of spiritual inheritance, often recognized only after it is lost. Above all, the story reveals the unshakable nature of God's promises. Despite human deceit and failure, his plan unfolds according to his will, weaving even the flawed actions of individuals into his greater purpose. The narrative continues with Esau receiving a secondary blessing from Isaac. Genesis 27:39-40 details Isaac's response to his devastated son. "Your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness, away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by the sword, and you will serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke from off your neck." This blessing, stark in contrast to Jacob's, foretells a life of struggle and conflict for Esau and his descendants. However, it includes a glimmer of hope, a promise of eventual liberation from subjugation to Jacob's line. The prophetic nature of Isaac's words suggests that Esau's story, though fraught with difficulty, is not devoid of redemption. Esau's anger boiled into a murderous resolve. Genesis 27:41 reveals his inner thoughts. Esau held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing his father had given him. He said to himself, "The days of mourning for my father are near, then I will kill my brother Jacob." The threat of fratricide demanded immediate action. Learning of Esau's intentions, Rebekah devised a plan to protect Jacob. Genesis 27:42-45 recounts her urgent instructions. "Flee at once to my brother Laban in Haran. Stay with him for a while until your brother's fury subsides. When your brother is no longer angry with you and forgets what you did to him, I'll send word for you to come back." Rebekah's strategy reflects both her cunning and her maternal concern. By sending Jacob to her family in Haran, she sought to shield him from Esau's wrath while preserving the continuity of the covenant promises. Her fear of losing both sons, one to murder and the other to vengeance, underscored the high stakes of the conflict. Jacob's departure marked a significant turning point. Before he left, Isaac, now fully aware of God's will, called Jacob to give him a deliberate and heartfelt blessing. Genesis 28:1-5 records Isaac's words. "Do not marry a Canaanite woman. Go at once to Paddan Aram, to the house of your mother's father Bethuel. Take a wife for yourself there from among the daughters of Laban, your mother's brother. May God Almighty bless you and make you fruitful and increase your numbers until you become a community of peoples. May he give you and your descendants the blessing given to Abraham, so that you may take possession of the land where you now reside as a foreigner, the land God gave to Abraham." This blessing, free from the earlier deception, signifies Isaac's acceptance of God's plan. It reaffirms the promises of land, descendants, and divine favor originally given to Abraham and passed to Isaac. Now, these promises rest upon Jacob as he begins a journey that will shape his character and destiny. As Jacob fled from Beersheba toward Haran, he carried the weight of a broken family and the burden of uncertainty. Genesis 28:10-11 describes his journey. Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. When he reached a certain place, he stopped for the night because the sun had set. Taking one of the stones there, he put it under his head and lay down to sleep. This moment, stark and solitary, marks the beginning of Jacob's spiritual transformation. Alone for the first time, fleeing the consequences of his deceit, Jacob found himself vulnerable and exposed. Yet, it was in this moment of isolation that God revealed himself in a profound way. Genesis 28:12-15 recounts Jacob's famous dream. He had a dream in which he saw a stairway resting on the earth, with its top reaching to heaven, and the angels of God were ascending and descending on it. There above it stood the Lord, and he said, "I am the Lord, the God of your father Abraham, and the God of Isaac. I will give you and your descendants the land on which you are lying. Your descendants will be like the dust of the earth, and you will spread out to the west and to the east, to the north and to the south. All peoples on earth will be blessed through you and your offspring. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you." This vision, often referred to as Jacob's ladder, is a vivid representation of the connection between heaven and earth. The stairway signifies God's active presence in the world, with angels symbolizing his ongoing work. The divine promise reaffirms the covenant made with Abraham and Isaac, now extended directly to Jacob. The assurance of God's presence and protection transforms Jacob's flight into a journey of divine purpose. Jacob's response to the vision marks the beginning of his personal relationship with God. Genesis 28:16-22 captures his reaction. When Jacob awoke from his sleep, he thought, "Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it." He was afraid and said, "How awesome is this place! This is none other than the house of God. This is the gate of heaven." Early the next morning, Jacob took the stone he had placed under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil on top of it. He called that place Bethel, though the city used to be called Luz. Jacob's vow reveals a profound shift in his spiritual awareness. If God will be with me and will watch over me on this journey I am taking, and will give me food to eat and clothes to wear, so that I return safely to my father's household, then the Lord will be my God. This stone that I have set up as a pillar will be God's house, and of all that you give me, I will give you a tenth. For the first time, Jacob acknowledges God as his own, not just the God of his father and grandfather. This moment at Bethel signifies a turning point in Jacob's life, as he begins to embrace the responsibilities and blessings of the covenant. The events at Bethel encapsulate the themes of transformation, divine presence, and covenantal faithfulness. Jacob's vision and response illustrate the unfolding of God's plan, even amidst human failings. Though Jacob's journey began as a desperate escape, it became a path of spiritual growth, shaping him into the patriarch who would later be renamed Israel. As Jacob continued toward Haran, he carried not only the weight of his past, but also the promise of a future shaped by God's unwavering faithfulness. His story reminds us that God meets us in our moments of vulnerability, using even our imperfections to fulfill his greater purposes. Jacob's arrival in Haran marks the beginning of a transformative chapter in his life, narrated with vivid detail in Genesis 29, 1-12. After a long journey, Jacob encounters a well where shepherds gather to water their flocks. The scene is reminiscent of earlier family episodes, such as Abraham's servant meeting Rebekah. Jacob inquires about his relatives, and the shepherds inform him that they know Laban, his uncle. As they speak, Rachel, Laban's daughter, approaches with her father's sheep. Jacob's reaction is immediate and dramatic. Demonstrating both his strength and eagerness to impress Rachel, he rolls away the heavy stone from the well's mouth single-handedly and waters her flock. Overcome with emotion, Jacob kisses Rachel and weeps, then introduces himself as her relative, the son of Rebekah. Rachel runs to inform her father of Jacob's arrival, setting the stage for a significant reunion. The reunion with Laban is warm at first. Genesis 29, 13-14 recounts, "As soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he hurried to meet him. He embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his home. And there Jacob told him all these things. Then Laban said to him, 'You are my own flesh and blood.' Laban's hospitality, however, quickly gives way to pragmatism. Seeing an opportunity to capitalize on Jacob's labor, Laban proposes an agreement. This marks the beginning of a complex relationship characterized by mutual cunning and deception. Laban had two daughters, Leah and Rachel. Leah is described as having weak eyes, while Rachel is noted for her beauty. Jacob, deeply in love with Rachel, offers to work for 7 years in exchange for her hand in marriage. Genesis 29, 18-20 captures the depth of Jacob's devotion. Jacob was in love with Rachel and said, "I'll work for you 7 years in return for your younger daughter Rachel." Laban said, "It's better that I give her to you than to some other man. Stay here with me." So Jacob served 7 years to get Rachel, but they seemed like only a few days to him because of his love for her. Jacob's willingness to labor for 7 years reflects both his love for Rachel and the patience he is beginning to cultivate, a stark contrast to his earlier life of manipulation and impulsiveness. When the 7 years are complete, Jacob eagerly demands his bride. Laban organizes a wedding feast, but in a cunning act of deception, he substitutes Leah for Rachel during the wedding night. Genesis 29-23-25 describes Jacob's shock the following morning. When morning came, there was Leah. So Jacob said to Laban, "What is this you have done to me? I served you for Rachel, didn't I? Why have you deceived me?" The irony of this moment is profound. Jacob, who deceived his father Isaac in the darkness, now finds himself deceived under the cover of night. Laban's explanation is unapologetic, citing local custom as justification. It is not our custom here to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older one. Genesis 29:26. Laban offers Rachel in marriage as well, on the condition that Jacob works an additional 7 years. Jacob agrees, completing Leah's bridal week and then marrying Rachel, his true love. This arrangement sets the stage for tension and rivalry between the sisters, a dynamic that will shape much of Jacob's life. Jacob's marriages to Leah and Rachel result in a complex and competitive family dynamic. Leah, feeling unloved, bears Jacob's first sons, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Rachel, unable to conceive, gives her servant Bilhah to Jacob as a surrogate, and Bilhah bears Dan and Naphtali. Leah, no longer bearing children, follows suit by giving her servant Zilpah to Jacob, resulting in the births of Gad and Asher. Later, Leah conceives again and gives birth to Issachar and Zebulun. Finally, after years of longing, Rachel conceives and gives birth to Joseph, Jacob's favored son. Each child's name reflects the emotions and struggles of his mother. For instance, Leah names her firstborn Reuben, meaning "see, a son," expressing her hope that Jacob will love her now that she has given him a son. This pattern continues with the births of each child, underscoring the deep rivalry between Leah and Rachel. Jacob's years in Haran are marked by hard work, personal growth, and familial conflict. Through his labor for Laban, Jacob learns patience and perseverance. Yet he also endures deception, mirroring the deceit he once inflicted on his father and brother. The tension between Leah and Rachel, fueled by Jacob's clear preference for Rachel, perpetuates a cycle of favoritism and rivalry that echoes Jacob's own upbringing. By the end of this period, Jacob has transitioned from a single man fleeing his past to the patriarch of a burgeoning family. However, the challenges of his relationships with Laban, Leah, Rachel, and their children foreshadow the trials that lie ahead. Jacob's time in Haran highlights several key themes. The consequences of deception. Just as Jacob deceived Isaac and Esau, he becomes the victim of Laban's trickery. This cycle of deceit underscores the principle that actions have the lasting repercussions. God's sovereignty. Despite human failings, God's covenant promises remain steadfast. The growth of Jacob's family aligns with God's promise to make his descendants as numerous as the dust of the earth. Transformation through struggle. Jacob's experiences in Haran, his labor, his marriages, and his role as a father begin to shape him into the man who will ultimately become Israel, the father of the 12 tribes. The complexity of family dynamics. The favoritism and rivalry within Jacob's household mirror the complexities of his own upbringing, reminding readers of the generational impact of familial relationships. As Jacob's time in Haran unfolds, his story becomes a tapestry of human weakness, woven with divine grace. His love for Rachel, his struggles with Leah, and his conflicts with Laban all serve to refine his character and draw him closer to fulfilling his destiny. The man who arrived in Haran as a fugitive will leave as the patriarch of a great family, carrying with him the lessons and scars of his transformative journey. Jacob's journey from Haran, filled with tension, divine encounters, and familial drama, illustrates the continued interplay of human ambition and divine providence. This phase of Jacob's life reveals both the consequences of his past actions and the unfolding of God's promises, as Jacob transitions from a cunning individual to a man deeply aware of God's sovereignty. Jacob's desire to return to his homeland surfaces after Rachel gives birth to Joseph. Genesis 30:25-26 records Jacob's appeal to Laban. "Send me on my way so I can go back to my own homeland. Give me my wives and children, for whom I have served you, and I will be on my way. You know how much work I have done for you." However, Laban, recognizing the blessings Jacob's presence has brought, is reluctant to let him go. He persuades Jacob to name his wages, leading to a new agreement that would significantly increase Jacob's wealth. Jacob's proposal, asking only for the speckled and spotted livestock, appears modest. Yet through selective breeding and divine favor, Jacob's flocks grow abundantly, inciting jealousy among Laban's sons. Genesis 31, 1-3 captures the growing tension. Jacob heard that Laban's sons were saying, "Jacob has taken everything our father owned and has gained all this wealth from what belonged to our father." And Jacob noticed that Laban's attitude toward him was not what it had been. Then the Lord said to Jacob, "Go back to the land of your fathers and to your relatives, and I will be with you." Shoo. God's command sets Jacob's departure in motion, marking the culmination of 2 decades of labor and strife. Jacob devises a plan to leave Haran quietly. Genesis 31, 4-13 narrates how he explains the situation to Rachel and Leah, recounting his grievances with Laban and a dream in which God reaffirmed his promise to be with him. Rachel and Leah support Jacob's decision, acknowledging their father's unjust treatment. Do we still have any share in the inheritance of our father's estate? Does he not regard us as foreigners? Not only has he sold us, but he has used up what was paid for us. Genesis 31, 14-15. Jacob's family departs during the sheep shearing season, a time when Laban would be preoccupied. Rachel's theft of her father's household gods adds a layer of complexity, hinting at lingering ties to her past or a desire to assert control over family inheritance. Genesis 31, 20-21 describes the secretive nature of their escape. Jacob deceived Laban the Aramean by not telling him he was running away, so he fled with all he had, crossed the Euphrates River, and headed for the hill country of Gilead. This flight underscores the lingering tension and mistrust between Jacob and Laban, even as Jacob seeks to obey God's command. 3 days later, Laban learns of Jacob's departure and sets out in pursuit. Genesis 31, 23-24 recounts how God intervenes. Then God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream at night and said to him, "Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad." This divine warning demonstrates God's continued protection over Jacob, ensuring that Laban cannot harm him. When Laban catches up with Jacob, their confrontation is tense. Laban accuses Jacob of deceit and theft, unaware that Rachel has taken the household gods. Rachel's clever deception prevents Laban from discovering the stolen gods. Genesis 31, 34-35 narrates her actions. Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them inside her camel's saddle and was sitting on them. Laban searched everything in the tent, but found nothing. Rachel said to her father, "Don't be angry, my lord, that I cannot stand up in your presence. I'm having my period." So he searched but could not find the household gods. Jacob, unaware of Rachel's theft, expresses his exasperation with Laban, recounting his years of faithful service and the injustices he endured. "For 20 years I have been with you. Your sheep and goats have not miscarried, nor have I eaten rams from your flocks. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham and the fear of Isaac, had not been with me, you would surely have sent me away empty-handed. But God has seen my hardship and the toil of my hands, and last night he rebuked you." Genesis 31, 38-42. Jacob's impassioned speech highlights the growth of his faith. He acknowledges God's hand in his success and protection, underscoring his increasing reliance on divine providence. The confrontation culminates in a covenant between Jacob and Laban, marked by a heap of stones as a witness to their agreement. Genesis 31, 48-49 records their words. Laban said, "This heap is a witness between you and me today." That is why it was called Galeed. It was also called Mizpah, because he said, "May the Lord keep watch between you and me when we are away from each other." This agreement establishes a boundary between their territories and ensures neither party will harm the other. Their parting, while formal and peaceful, signifies the final severance of Jacob's ties to Laban. As Jacob continues his journey, he experiences another divine encounter. Genesis 32, 1-2 describes this moment. Jacob also went on his way, and the angels of God met him. When Jacob saw them, he said, "This is the camp of God." So he named that place Mahanaim. This brief but profound encounter reassures Jacob of God's presence and protection as he prepares to face the challenges ahead, including a looming confrontation with his estranged brother Esau. Jacob's departure from Haran represents a pivotal moment in his journey. He leaves behind years of labor, conflict, and deception to return to the land of his ancestors. No longer the young man who fled after deceiving his brother, Jacob has become a patriarch with a large family and substantial wealth. Yet, the trials of his journey and the unresolved tension with Esau serve as reminders that his transformation is still ongoing. This chapter underscores God's unwavering faithfulness. Despite Jacob's flaws and the complexities of his relationships, God continues to fulfill his promises, shaping Jacob into the leader of a great nation. The journey ahead will bring new challenges and opportunities for growth, as Jacob continues to learn what it means to walk in covenant with God. The tension in Jacob's life reaches a critical point as he prepares for his long-dreaded encounter with Esau. Genesis 32:3-21 details Jacob's meticulous preparations, reflecting his deep fear of retribution for deceiving his brother 2 decades earlier. Jacob sends messengers ahead to inform Esau of his return. When they report back that Esau is coming with 400 men, Jacob is terrified. In response, he divides his camp into 2 groups, reasoning that if one is attacked, the other might escape. This strategy highlights Jacob's anxiety and practical planning, but it is his heartfelt prayer that reveals his growing dependence on God. "O God of my father Abraham, God of my father Isaac, Lord, you who said to me, 'Go back to your country and your relatives, and I will make you prosper,' I am unworthy of all the kindness and faithfulness you have shown your servant. I had only my staff when I crossed this Jordan, but now I have become 2 camps. Save me, I pray, from the hand of my brother Esau, for I am afraid he will come and attack me, and also the mothers with their children. But you have said, 'I will surely make you prosper, and will make your descendants like the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted.'" Genesis 32:9-12. Jacob's prayer is a profound moment of humility and faith. He acknowledges his unworthiness and appeals to God's promises, balancing fear with trust. To further pacify Esau, Jacob prepares a substantial gift of livestock, sending it ahead in waves to demonstrate his goodwill. Despite his fears, these actions show Jacob's willingness to reconcile with his brother and face the consequences of his past. That night, Jacob faces a transformative encounter that will redefine his identity. Genesis 32:22. 32 narrates his mysterious struggle with a divine being. "So Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him till daybreak. When the man saw that he could not overpower him, he touched the socket of Jacob's hip, so that his hip was wrenched as he wrestled with the man. Then the man said, 'Let me go, for it is daybreak.' But Jacob replied, 'I will not let you go unless you bless me.'" The struggle symbolizes Jacob's lifelong battle with his brother, with others, and with God. When asked his name, Jacob answers truthfully, signaling a shift from his earlier deceptive tendencies. The man responds, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." Genesis 32:28. This renaming marks a pivotal transformation. No longer defined as the supplanter, Jacob is now Israel, one who strives with God. Though Jacob emerges blessed, he also bears a limp, a physical reminder of the encounter and a symbol of his reliance on God. The next day, Jacob finally meets Esau. Approaching with his family, Jacob bows to the ground 7 times, demonstrating humility and submission. Genesis 33:4, however, records a moment of grace. But Esau ran to meet Jacob and embraced him. He threw his arms around his neck and kissed him. and they wept. Esau's unexpected embrace dissolves years of tension. The generosity and forgiveness Esau displays stand in stark contrast to Jacob's fears. When Esau declines Jacob's gifts, Jacob insists, "Please accept the present that was brought to you, for God has been gracious to me, and I have all I need." Genesis 33:11. The encounter concludes with the brothers parting peacefully. Jacob travels to Succoth and then to Shechem, where he purchases land and builds an altar, naming it El Elohe Israel, God, the God of Israel, solidifying his renewed relationship with God. Jacob's newfound peace is shattered by a tragedy involving his daughter, Dinah. Genesis 34 recounts that Dinah is violated by Shechem, the son of Hamor, the ruler of the region. Though Shechem offers to marry Dinah, Jacob's sons, Simeon and Levi, devise a plan of vengeance. They agree to the marriage on the condition that all the men of Shechem be circumcised. While the Shechemites recover, Simeon and Levi attack the city, killing every male. Jacob's response is one of dismay and fear. "You have brought trouble on me by making me obnoxious to the Canaanites and Perizzites, the people living in this land. We are few in number, and if they join forces against me and attack me, I and my household will be destroyed." Genesis 34:30. This event underscores the volatility within Jacob's family and the dangers of their environment. The massacre strains Jacob's relationship with his sons and reinforces the challenges of living in a foreign land. In the aftermath of the Shechem incident, God instructs Jacob to return to Bethel, the site of his earlier vision. This call reorients Jacob's focus, reminding him of his covenantal responsibilities and the need for spiritual renewal. The journey to Bethel signifies not only a physical relocation, but also a reaffirmation of Jacob's commitment to God. Jacob's experiences in this chapter reveal a man in transition. The fear-driven, self-reliant fugitive of earlier years is slowly being shaped into Israel, the patriarch who relies on God's promises. His wrestling with God at Peniel is the defining moment, marking a shift from striving against God to striving with him. The reconciliation with Esau showcases the redemptive power of forgiveness and grace, while the Shechem incident highlights the ongoing struggles and imperfections of Jacob's family. Despite these challenges, God's faithfulness remains constant, guiding Jacob as he navigates the complexities of his relationships and the fulfillment of his covenantal destiny. Jacob's journey is a profound reminder of God's ability to work through human weakness and failure, transforming flawed individuals into instruments of his divine plan. As Jacob moves forward, he does so with the assurance that the God who promised to bless him will continue to lead him, even through trials and uncertainties. Jacob's return to Bethel represents a pivotal moment in his spiritual journey. After the trauma and conflict in Shechem, Jacob takes deliberate steps to lead his family in spiritual renewal. Genesis 35:2-3 describes this act of purification. "So Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, 'Get rid of the foreign gods you have with you and purify yourselves and change your clothes. Then come, let us go up to Bethel, where I will build an altar to God, who answered me in the day of my distress and who has been with me wherever I have gone.'" This act of cleansing reflects Jacob's growing maturity and understanding of his covenant relationship with God. He acknowledges God's faithfulness and seeks to align his family with divine purposes. At Bethel, God reaffirms his covenant with Jacob, solidifying his new identity as Israel. Genesis 35:10-12 records God's declaration, "Your name is Jacob, but you will no longer be called Jacob. Your name will be Israel. I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and increase in number. A nation and a community of nations will come from you, and kings will be among your descendants. The land I gave to Abraham and Isaac, I also give to you, and I will give this land to your descendants after you." This moment reinforces Jacob's role in the divine plan and renews the promises first given to Abraham and Isaac. Jacob's journey has brought him full circle, and his faith is now firmly rooted in God's covenant. As Jacob's family journeys from Bethel to Ephrath, tragedy strikes. Genesis 35:16-20 narrates the birth of Benjamin and the death of Rachel. Rachel began to give birth and had great difficulty. As she breathed her last, for she was dying, she named her son Ben-Oni, but his father named him Benjamin. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is, Bethlehem. Rachel's death during childbirth is a heartbreaking loss for Jacob, as she was the wife he loved most deeply. Her final act, naming her son Ben-Oni, son of my sorrow, reflects her pain. Jacob's renaming of the child to Benjamin, son of my right hand, demonstrates his determination to honor her memory while looking forward with hope. Jacob's family troubles continue with an act of betrayal by his firstborn son, Reuben. Genesis 35:22 briefly recounts. While Israel was living in that region, Reuben went in and slept with his father's concubine Bilhah, and Israel heard of it. This act of dishonor has far-reaching consequences. It undermines Reuben's standing as the firstborn and foreshadows his loss of leadership within the family. Jacob's journey comes full circle with his return to his father Isaac in Hebron. Genesis 35:27-29 describes Isaac's death. Isaac lived 180 years. Then he breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his people, old and full of years, and his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. This moment of mourning briefly unites Jacob and Esau, emphasizing the cyclical nature of life and reconciliation. With Isaac's passing, the torch of patriarchal leadership fully shifts to Jacob. As Jacob settles in Canaan, the narrative shifts to his children, particularly Joseph. Genesis 37:3-4 highlights Jacob's favoritism toward Joseph. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made an ornate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of them, they hated him and could not speak a kind word to him. The ornate robe, often translated as a coat of many colors, becomes a symbol of Jacob's preference for Joseph, reigniting the cycle of favoritism and jealousy that marked Jacob's own family dynamics. Joseph's prophetic dreams, in which his brothers' sheaves bow to his and the sun, moon and stars bow to him, exacerbate the animosity. Even Jacob rebukes him for the second dream, though he keeps the matter in mind. These dreams foreshadow Joseph's future rise to power, but alienate him further from his brothers. The tension culminates in a dramatic act of betrayal. When Joseph's brothers see him approaching, they conspire to kill him. Genesis 37:18-20 captures their initial plan. "Here comes that dreamer," they said to each other. "Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams." Reuben intervenes, suggesting they throw Joseph into a cistern instead, intending to rescue him later. However, Judah proposes selling Joseph to a passing caravan of Ishmaelites. Genesis 37:28 describes the fateful transaction. "So when the Midianite merchants came by, his brothers pulled Joseph up out of the cistern and sold him for 20 shekels of silver to the Ishmaelites, who took him to Egypt." The brothers deceive Jacob into believing Joseph is dead by dipping his ornate robe in goat's blood. Genesis 37:33-35 portrays Jacob's devastation. He recognized it and said, "It is my son's robe. Some ferocious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes, put on sackcloth and mourned for his son many days. Despite his family's attempts to comfort him, Jacob refuses consolation, declaring he will mourn Joseph until he joins him in the grave. This period of mourning marks a dark chapter in Jacob's life, filled with sorrow and the haunting consequences of favoritism and familial discord. As the focus of the narrative transitions to Joseph in Egypt, Jacob's story enters a quieter phase. The events set into motion by Joseph's betrayal will eventually lead to reconciliation and redemption for the entire family. Jacob, though deeply grieved, remains central to the unfolding of God's covenant promises. His journey from deception to patriarchal leadership is far from over, as the trials of his family continue to shape his character and the destiny of the nation of Israel. This phase of Jacob's life underscores the enduring themes of God's faithfulness amid human frailty, the complexity of family relationships, and the redemptive arc that weaves through the generations. Even in his darkest moments, Jacob's legacy continues to unfold, tethered to the divine promises that define his story. Jacob's later years are a testament to God's faithfulness and the culmination of a life marked by struggle, reconciliation, and growth. As famine grips the land, Jacob finds himself once again thrust into the unfolding of God's plan for his family. Genesis 42:1-2 recounts Jacob's pivotal decision. When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his sons, "Why do you just keep looking at each other? I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us, so that we may live and not die." This decision sets into motion a series of events that will lead to the long-awaited reunion with his beloved son Joseph, whom he believed dead for decades. The initial trip to Egypt results in the detention of Simeon and a demand from Joseph, still incognito, to bring Benjamin, Rachel's younger son, on their next visit. Jacob's anguish is palpable in Genesis 42:36. Their father Jacob said to them, "You have deprived me of my children. Joseph is no more, and Simeon is no more, and now you want to take Benjamin. Everything is against me." Jacob's reluctance to part with Benjamin reflects his deep fear of losing the last connection to Rachel. However, as their provisions dwindle, Judah takes personal responsibility for Benjamin's safety, ultimately convincing Jacob to relent. Before sending his sons back to Egypt, Jacob demonstrates his wisdom and faith. Genesis 43:11-14 records his instructions and blessing. "If it must be, then do this. Put some of the best products of the land in your bags and take them down to the man as a gift. Take your brother also and go back to the man at once. And may God Almighty grant you mercy before the man, so that he will let your other brother and Benjamin come back with you. As for me, if I am bereaved, I am bereaved." Jacob's prayer reflects his dependence on God amidst his fears, a recurring theme in his journey. The emotional climax of the story occurs when Joseph reveals his identity to his brothers. Genesis 45:9-11 captures Joseph's urgent message for his father. "Hurry back to my father and say to him, 'This is what your son Joseph says. God has made me lord of all Egypt. Come down to me. Don't delay. You shall live in the region of Goshen and be near me. You, your children and grandchildren, your flocks and herds and all you have, I will provide for you there." When Jacob hears the news, his initial disbelief gives way to joy. Genesis 45:26-28 describes the moment his spirit is revived. They told him, "Joseph is still alive. In fact, he is ruler of all Egypt." Jacob was stunned. He did not believe them. But when he saw the carts Joseph had sent to carry him back, the spirit of their father Jacob revived. And Israel said, "I'm convinced. My son Joseph is still alive. I will go and see him before I die." As Jacob prepares to leave Canaan, God reassures him in a vision at Beersheba. Genesis 46:2-4 records this divine encounter. "I am God, the God of your father," he said. "Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you into a great nation there. I will go down to Egypt with you, and I will surely bring you back again. And Joseph's own hand will close your eyes." This promise underscores God's ongoing presence and his plan to fulfill the covenant even in a foreign land. The reunion between Jacob and Joseph is one of the most poignant moments in the Bible. Genesis 46:29-30 describes the scene. "Joseph had his chariot made ready and went to Goshen to meet his father Israel. As soon as Joseph appeared before him, he threw his arms around his father and wept for a long time. Israel said to Joseph, "Now I am ready to die, since I have seen for myself that you are still alive." This emotional embrace reflects the fulfillment of decades of longing and sorrow. Jacob's encounter with Pharaoh highlights his unique role as the patriarch of God's chosen people. Genesis 47:9 records Jacob's response to Pharaoh's inquiry about his age. "The years of my pilgrimage are 130. My years have been few and difficult, and they do not equal the years of the pilgrimage of my fathers." Despite his trials, Jacob recognizes his life as a journey under God's guidance, and he blesses Pharaoh, a gesture of spiritual authority. The final years of Jacob's life are spent in peace and prosperity in Egypt. Genesis 47:27-28 summarizes, "Now the Israelites settled in Egypt in the region of Goshen. They acquired property there and were fruitful and increased greatly in number. Jacob lived in Egypt 17 years, and the years of his life were 147. Before his death, Jacob bestows blessings on his sons and Joseph's two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh. In a symbolic act reminiscent of his own story, Jacob crosses his hands, giving the younger Ephraim the greater blessing. Genesis 48:19 explains, "His younger brother will be greater than he, and his descendants will become a group of nations." The prophetic blessings in Genesis 49 reflect the future destinies of Jacob's 12 sons, shaping the tribes of Israel. Each blessing carries significance, from Judah's royal lineage to the challenges faced by others. Jacob's instructions for his burial reveal his deep connection to the land of Canaan. Genesis 49:29-31 records his final request. "Bury me with my fathers in the cave in the field of Ephron the Hittite. There Abraham and his wife Sarah were buried, there Isaac and his wife Rebekah were buried, and there I buried Leah." After blessing his sons, Jacob breathes his last, and his body is embalmed and mourned extensively in Egypt. The grand funeral procession to Canaan, described in Genesis 57:13, underscores Jacob's enduring legacy as the patriarch of a growing nation. Jacob's life, marked by deceit, struggle, reconciliation, and faith, stands as a testament to God's ability to work through human imperfection. His story demonstrates the transformative power of God's covenant, shaping not only Jacob, but also the destiny of Israel. From his early days of striving with men to his later years of walking with God, Jacob's journey mirrors the complexities of human experience. His life challenges us to trust in God's promises, even when the path is fraught with difficulty, and reminds us that redemption and fulfillment are found in the faithfulness of God. What lessons do you see reflected in Jacob's journey? How might his story resonate with your own experiences of growth, reconciliation, and faith? If you enjoyed exploring the incredible story of Jacob and the profound lessons it offers, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications. This way, you'll never miss an upcoming video about biblical characters and the timeless truths we can apply to our lives today. Just as God faithfully guided Jacob through his challenges, struggles, and triumphs, He desires to work in your life too, shaping your journey in ways you might not yet imagine. Thank you for joining us on this journey of faith, transformation, and discovery. God bless you and see you in the next video.